Welcome to Evangelical-ish, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly of the American Evangelical Church, deconstruction, faith, and God's love through it all. Join us for these episodes live on our Evangelical-ish YouTube page on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, and 6 o'clock Pacific. Let's journey together.
Well, welcome to Evangelical-ish. It is episode 2. I am Jeremy.
And I'm April.
And tonight, Paul is not with us. I had to be really careful to make sure to not say something like "is no longer with us" or something. Paul is still
right.
Amongst
He's still
us.
alive.
Yes, yeah. Paul is still very much alive. But his son had a baseball game that he was able to go watch tonight, and he texted April and I lovingly and said, "I love you guys, but not as much as my son," and we completely understand that. We're grateful for that. But sitting in tonight, our first guest on Evangelical-ish is Jessica Eaton. Y'all know her from TikTok. Yes, applause from everyone. Y'all know her from TikTok at Jess Eaton. She is one of my favorite creators, hands down, no doubt about that. And actually got a chance to connect with her early on when I got on TikTok. We were both, I don't know, in the couple of thousands range with Jess. And since then, I kind of hit a surge, and then you hit a crazy surge.
Crazy.
So anyway, excited to have Jess Eaton on tonight. Going to get to talk about a lot of really awesome things with her content and just her heart. So April, this is fun.
This is so much fun. I actually feel I feel like I'm talking to a celebrity a little bit because your videos are always on my For You page, and I feel like I know you. Oh, hey, people in the live chat are saying that they can't hear us over the music.
I forgot to turn the music down. I'm sorry. Listen, if y'all knew what was going on like right before this happened, I was like scrambling just to make equipment work. Let us know if it's better now.
Can y'all hear us?
Yes. Let us know if it's better now. But anyway, so yeah, hey, we're doing this live. We're doing it live, guys. So anyway, but yeah, no, I'm fangirling a little bit too. I'm not gonna lie. So Jess, kind of tell us a little bit about your background and pre Jessica TikTok.
Yeah. So my name is pre TikTok. Yeah. So my name is Jessica Eaton. I'm just a regular old schmegular mom of 2 kids. I'm a wife. And my husband and I actually, we pastor a church. And so we moved to Jacksonville to plant a church, and we lead pastor a church in Jacksonville. So I'm very vocal about racism, and I believe, we'll go into all that, but I do believe that we can't, look at God's creation and say he made a mistake, And I think with racism, we do that. We do it often, and we should talk about it, especially being the church. So, yeah. What about me?
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, so somebody said start over with introductions. I will just say I'm Jeremy. That's April. You guys know us. We're part of the Evangelical-ish squad. Paul is out tonight getting to watch his son play baseball. We're with Jessica Eaton. She's at the Jess Eaton on TikTok, and just one of our favorite creators for sure. She does an amazing job addressing racism straight on. And I think one of the first videos that you and I were kind of, just following each other, appreciating each other's content. And then I commented on one of your videos about, you had actually said something about how when white allies talk about things, it doesn't make people as uncomfortable as when you talk about that same stuff. And you said, and you just, so I had mentioned, like, I just commented on that. And then you came back with, would people still be as uncomfortable if I were a white ally saying these things? And I just remember that provoked a ton of thought with me, because I was like, no, they wouldn't, because with you, and I think the thing I said in the video was, with you, people have to look at all that injustice in the face. They have to answer it. It's not through me. They can look at me and hear me talk about racial justice and all of those things all day long, but they still don't have to face it head on,
right.
And so that's kind of where you and I kind of started building and just have enjoyed your content since then. But what is it like kind of being on that front line of saying the things that a lot of folks are either, like you said, uncomfortable to say, or they don't want to hear maybe, and people don't necessarily want to hear because they just want to continue to be naive to it. I mean, what is it like to kind of stand in that front line?
Yeah, it's a balance. It's a balance because I try to, gosh, I don't want to make this all about the Bible, but Scripture talks about giving things the truth in love. You know what I mean? And so you have to have that balance of, I need to give you the truth, right? But I also have to understand and have the compassion that you may not know the truth. So how am I going to deliver the truth? I still deliver the truth. It's going to be hard to hear, especially in the American church. But this is the truth. And then we need to deliver it. And we can no longer sugarcoat it because, look where we're at. Right? Mm-hmm. It's 2021 and it's been sugarcoated this whole time. Mm-hmm. And we've been able to slip under the radar and hide under this, we're all one race, the human race, Jesus loves all the little children, while people are dying in the street. So how long are we going to sit back and not address those things? When we see in Scripture, Jesus was very, very clear about oppression and how we should handle those things. So.
What made you decide to make your TikTok channel specifically an anti-racist channel?
Yeah, well, I had spoken out against racism for a long time. And for a long time, I got a lot of pushback.
You were on YouTube first, right?
I was on YouTube first. Yep. I was on YouTube first. But I had spoken out personally, like on my personal Facebook page for a long time. And I've gotten a lot of pushback because pastors aren't supposed to speak about that. That's not what pastors talk about. And so I had to find the line of, I remember when I was sitting pregnant with my son, and I had watched the documentary on Trayvon Martin. And when I was watching that documentary, the only thing I could think of was, what if that was my son? And I remember being pregnant. My husband and I found out we were pregnant with our son through a blood test. So we found out really early. I was 11 weeks pregnant. And I remember, telling him, hey, I got the message, I can open it up, whatever. And we sit there and we open it and, it's a boy. We knew it. We have a 5-year-old girl. We knew it was going to be a boy. We knew it was going to be a boy. And then we both have this look on our face like, we're going to have to tell him what to wear, aren't we? And it was at that moment I knew, okay, we have to do something to change this. I shouldn't be worried about my son wearing a hoodie and he's in my womb and he's 11 weeks in my womb.
Well, I remember having, and I kind of talked about this on last week's first episode of, I had the privilege of going to a diverse school system. So a lot of guys that I played ball with and stuff like that were guys of color. And I just remember in 7th grade, one of my friends looking at me and going, your mama is never going to have to tell you not to wear a hoodie at night. Like, that's literally something he said. Like, my dad has had that talk with me. My mom has had that talk with me. Like, and I just thought, man, that rattled my brain because it was like, because he was right. And now you told a story. This one, I just about got in the pastor from Oklahoma truck and came rolling out to Florida. Tell me a cop did not follow you home and make you unlock your front door.
Yes, I'm so serious. Yeah, I was 21 or 22 when I lived with roommates, and. Yeah, he pulled me over because, I wasn't supposed to be, I had my high beams on. I was coming home from work late. I was bartending at a restaurant and I had my high beams on in the oncoming traffic, which you're not supposed to do. If a car is coming, you're supposed to shut your high beams off. I knew that, right? I wasn't expecting anything. Usually when I get pulled over, I expect a ticket. That's just kind of how it always is, very, very few times, maybe once or twice have I gotten let off, but I don't get pulled over a lot. I'm like driving crazy, like, dang, girl, how many times you get pulled over? But this particular time, yeah, he pulled me over in the neighborhood I was in and didn't believe I lived in the neighborhood, and told me he was going to follow me home and make sure I lived there. And he followed me home, and I put my key in my door, and as soon as I opened my door, he pulled off and left. And you know what's crazy? I was 21 years old. I didn't think anything of it. I told people, and they were like, he just wanted to make sure you got home safe. And as I got older, I understood, no, he wasn't making sure I got home safe. He was making sure I actually lived at where I told him I lived at when I said I lived in the neighborhood.
Well, because that doesn't even make sense, though, because like you weren't distressed. Like, he pulled you over for high beams. It wasn't like you were driving sporadic or had any kind of health issue. Like, I've never had a cop follow me home to make sure I was okay or whatever. Like, that's not a thing. That excuse makes zero sense. The only thing that makes sense. Yeah.
It doesn't. Yeah. The only thing, there's so many things, especially, you were saying that you grew up in a, mixed school system. I grew up in one of the best school systems in Florida. We moved from New Jersey in a really rough area, and my dad just decided he didn't want to raise us like that. And so I ended up, a lot of my life went to predominantly white schools. And so I didn't even realize the racism that I had experienced until I was an adult, where I actually started to piece these things together. Like, wow, that was actually racism. And I just never put it together.
That's so wild.
I know right before this, we were talking about that you and your husband pastor a Black church currently, and but how you were raised in mostly white evangelical circles and churches. Tell me, I'm just curious, the difference between the two that you've felt firsthand.
Yeah. Well, what's funny about our church now is that we're actually multicultural. We're about split half and half.
Oh, that's awesome.
Half white people and half, or I should say, white people, and then the other half are minorities, really. And so we currently, like I said, pastor a church. It's a lot different. I think I understand now about diversity being intentional. I've been to a lot of churches, predominantly white churches, and where my husband and I have sometimes been the only Black people there, or one of the very few. And understanding, how important diversity is, not just in your church, but on your staff, in your team, especially when you're leading a church. We have our leadership team. We have people of all different backgrounds, all different races, but it's just, I'll tell you this, there's a lot of covert racism in the evangelical church, and the evangelical church doesn't even realize it.
Yeah, I know when you were saying how you didn't realize the stuff that you experienced growing up was racism until you were older. I feel like that's so true for so many white people, and that they don't realize stuff that they have said and done is racist. So sometimes they may not ever realize that. I know early on.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll tell you a quick story. So I'll tell you how deep I was not realizing it. Okay, it's going to blow your mind, because now I look back at it and I'm like, Jessica, what were you doing? So in high school, I had a nickname. And I don't know if you guys ever done powder puff or anything in high school, but we had our jerseys and we had our nicknames on the back of our jersey, our t-shirt. And my nickname was Oreo. That was my nickname. And it never even occurred to me. And to the point where I played into it. What was on the back of my shirt was Oreo.
Oh my goodness.
And I never even played into it.
And because inside the bubble, right? Like it probably never clicked. Oh my gosh.
It never clicked.
Well, I mean,
it never clicked.
But that, I mean, that makes sense because when you look at the history of our country, just from its very foundation, it has always been a place where white people define what is acceptable from its inception. You know, I was talking about there was a kid who put out a video that was like, well, if we're gonna, whoever that country guy was that, you know, was running around yelling you know, racial slurs in front of his house, and you know, people got frustrated, and then a lot of people were like, you know, he just said the wrong word or whatever it is, like the wrong word. And I just remember that video coming out. The kid was like, well, if he's going to get canceled, then let's cancel all these rappers for using that word or whatever. And it just stopped me in my tracks, because when I started thinking about when I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about another video that I saw where a kid was like, you know, well, black folks are so privileged because they get a whole month to celebrate their history. And I just remember having this thought, and it was something I put in the video. Are you really privileged if you have a month to celebrate your culture and heritage, or are you privileged if you give the month because you control the calendar?
Right. Yeah. And that's good. Yeah.
And I feel like for so long, the calendar, the culture, the what's okay and what's not okay, the socially acceptable has been controlled by white culture so much that, I mean, that we have just sucked away the pieces that we like. You know, we like hip hop, so we're going to take that, and Macklemore's going to win Album of the Year or whatever. Sorry, I got to drive by on that one, but it's just like,
I felt that.
But Kendrick's album was better. Let's just call it what it is. But I mean, we look at that and it's like, well, we're going to take the pieces we want. We're not going to look at the whole picture. And it's just been this culture of control that has continued to stem throughout the system. I mean, wouldn't you kind of agree?
Yeah. You know, I like to think, as I always say this, you know, we look at racism as a smoking gun and not a domino effect. And we need to look at racism as a domino effect. You know, we see these big bangs and we think, oh, that's racism, because we see it, right? Or we see, you know, George Floyd happen. That's racism. We see, you know, Breonna Taylor happen. We can say that's racism. But we don't see the domino effects, right? And so we ask ourselves, well, why do Black people get? If there was a white entertainment television, every channel is white entertainment television. Literally every one. You know what I mean? Ask why there's a reason that we need to have a Black entertainment television, because there wasn't any representation. Now, don't cancel me, people, because I know I speak out about anti-racism, but I love the show Friends, okay? Sue me, whatever. but I like Friends.
It's a good show.
I like it, okay? It was a staple in our home when I was younger, all right? I watched season 1 through 10. It was a staple, right? It was a Thursday family gathering. Anyway, we watch Friends, and as I go back and watch Friends, I'm like, wow, no Black people lived in New York ever until season 7. Like, you know, and it's like, you look at Friends, you look at Seinfeld, you look at all these shows, you know, primetime television when I was growing up, and there are no people of color, nowhere. And then it's like, we say, well, what about BET? And it's like, well, why was there a need for BET? Why was there a need for a Howard University? There was a need for a Howard because Black people could not go to white schools. Yeah. They were segregated. They couldn't go to white colleges.
That's what somebody asked me one time, you know, here, you know, some of our Oklahoma friends that need further education. I'll say it that way.
It's kind.
Well, I live in Florida, so I get it.
Yeah. This is Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Florida talking. We all get it.
Yeah, we know. We all know these people.
We know.
But it was just like, it was like, well, why aren't we celebrating? What did he say? Historically white colleges and universities, and I was like, Because they were all that. Like,
yeah.
You know, like
which ones do you want me to name?
What you mean? Like
Yeah.
when? Let me. And my question to him was pretty simple. It was, name the time that the National Guard has had to escort you into a public university for your safety, or anybody that looks like you. You can't name it. Want to know why? Because it's not a thing. And that's, I mean, that's what we're really talking about here is that ultimately, and what's unfortunate is that I think, you know, cause you were kind of mentioning the church earlier. What's unfortunate is that, not starting, but it ramped up through the Obama presidency, this white evangelical push for, you know, old school, what they called religion and all this kind of fundamental mindset. But what it did is roll out the red carpet for a Donald Trump and for the evangelical church that we see now, which felt like, you know, 1,000 steps backwards to the 3 steps forwards that we had made.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of talk about that from your perspective for a second, Jess, like to go from the first man of color to take the presidential oath to the Trump administration and living through 4 years of that. I mean, how does that feel?
Yeah. You know, I like to think of it this way. I think people got upset. You know, the reality is that our entire existence in United States of America has been centered around whiteness, right? And so when it's always centered around whiteness, white people know, like, you know, it said like, well, you know, you can be anything, but they don't really mean that. Like, you can be anything, but we don't want you to be anything. You know what I'm saying? And I think that President Obama just showed, you know, having a Black family in the White House showed that Black people really can be anything. We got to get a grip on this. Like we really can be anything. You know what I'm saying?
Ooh, interesting.
You know what I mean?
So you think...
Go ahead.
Well, no, I just wanted to expand on that for a second. So you think it was like, you know, maybe I don't have to be as blatantly racist anymore. Oh, you can do anything. The system's got it under control. Nudge, nudge kind of deal. And then when the system no longer had it under control and the glass ceiling got broken for the highest office in the land, then you think people are like, whoa. Wait, we said that, but what we really meant was wink, wink, right?
We didn't really mean that. Yeah. We didn't really mean that. And we have to gain some sort of control. So when, you know, it's hard to sit in a place being a white person and being told no, because you've never been told no, right? And so I'm saying, like, in a systemic sense, right? Like, so you've never been told no, you've been affirmed in whiteness constantly throughout history, right? That whether you believe you're superior or not, you don't have to believe it or not. We can see that on display, right? And so, you know, we hid under, you know, this, you know, abortion. We've hid under these things to say, well, the church stands up for the unborn. So we back the unborn guy. So let's back him. We say that, right? But it's just a way to get our agenda across, because honestly, like, the American church has been doing this and this with Jesus and white supremacy. It just has. And you can't. You literally cannot. Like, you can't serve 2 masters. You can only serve one. And so we have been serving where we feel like our Christianity is also nationalism, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's just not, you know? And if you guys don't mind, real quick, because this is something that I always go back to, just because I've noticed a lot of people, when they back someone like former President Trump, is they'll say, well, the innocent blood, we have to defend the innocent blood. But a lot of people miss the innocent blood verse, right? In Proverbs 6. It's one of my favorite verses. It's become one of my favorite verses. But the thing about Proverbs 6, if you guys don't mind me reading real quick,
come on.
Is Proverbs 6:16 says this: there are 6 things the Lord hates. No, 7 he detests: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that plots evil, feet that race to do wrong, a false witness that pours out lies, and a person that sows discord in a family. So where did we get to pick that one out of all those 7 things? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
And how many, I'm just going to call a spade real fast.
Go ahead.
How many?
I already know what you're saying.
How many of those things can we pin on former President Trump?
Hello.
All of them.
All of them.
All of the above answer.
But we don't want to see that.
Mm-hmm. I think the most eye-opening thing for me was when I realized that the whole religious right did not originate over the abortion issue, but it actually originated with segregation. And specifically like Bob Jones University, because they still did not allow interracial marriage, and the government was telling them, you're going to lose your tax status if you don't allow interracial marriage, because this is a federal whatever. And then that's when Jerry Falwell and the religious right and the moral majority started, was over trying to ban interracial marriage and saying that the government can't tell them. And I feel like the white church specifically has been on the wrong side of history in regards to racism the whole time, because they use the same verses that they use today to justify slavery.
Yeah.
And I think it's so easy to like disconnect of like, oh, well, if I was back then, you know, I wouldn't have been for slavery. I would have spoken up. But the reality is I feel like how you are reacting today is how you would have acted back then.
You say you would not affirm slavery back then, while you stand there and hold a Confederate flag and talk about your heritage. Shut your dadgum mouth. No, you don't.
It's literally the weirdest thing. It's the weirdest thing. It is so weird. And, you know, it's like, to me, it's like, instead of getting mad about people trying to tear down our country or tear down what our country stood for, as believers, get mad that the Bible was used to manipulate people into believing slavery was okay. Get mad that the Bible was used to manipulate people into believing that segregation was okay. Get mad at that. Like, we're constantly mad at the wrong things. Like, we're mad at, like, it's the weirdest thing. Like, wait, you're mad that, you know, we're tearing down, like, we should get rid of the Confederacy, like, who went against, like, do y'all know what the Confederacy is? Like, y'all know they were traitors, right? Like, this wasn't like they weren't, like, on the same team. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't, like, they were the other team. Like, y'all know that, right? Like, and so, but we get so upset about like, well, you know, it's like like I said, we become Christian nationalists, where we've held our nation to the higher regard of our scripture. It's like, it's the craziest. It's mind blowing to me. Mind blowing.
I want to ask you a question, because I earlier this year got on TikTok because of the pandemic and I was bored. I feel like that's all of us, maybe.
We all got it.
Thanks COVID. But so anyway, so I started talking about just kind of how I left conservatism, and there's like, anyway, lots of different stuff. But when I would talk about the church in my first few videos, I just said the church, like the American church in general. And I had, you know, a few different people saying like, you need to specify the white church, because there are plenty of multicultural and Black churches that don't fall under like what I was talking about. So now I always make a point to specifically call out like white conservative evangelicals, because that's typically, you know, that's where I've come from, and that's where I see a lot of the nationalism. But now I see the flip side of that, and I have all these white people that are like, you're racist because you're calling us white. I'm like, you are white, and it's like they don't understand the systemic like nature of like, when I say the white church, I'm not like necessarily talking about like individual white people, but just like the white, like whiteness as an entity.
Right. I'll give you a good example. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go.
No, I was going to say, I'll give you a good example of that. I tell my husband this because it really hit me like a ton of bricks, right? I've realized that the white evangelical church will hold higher regard to white Jews than they will Black Christians. They're more willing to go to bat for white Jews. You go to bat. I mean, obviously this is a love and everything, right? But you're more willing to stand up in defense of Jerusalem, right, than you are for your brothers and sisters in Christ that are a different color than you. And I mean, whether we want to believe it or not, like, it's the truth, right? I mean, it is the truth. And so, and it's so prominent just at how far we're willing to go for whiteness. And I'm not one to compare, tragedies, because I just feel like you don't need to do that. Like, each tragedy is held in its own regard. But it was so interesting to me how many people were telling how many Christians, white evangelicals, were telling black people or black Christians, me, I know, because they've been telling me to get over slavery, but yet show reverence for Holocaust Remembrance Day. You know what I'm saying? And so it now that should be remembered. Absolutely, 100%. Holocaust Remembrance Day should absolutely be remembered. A tragedy happened there, 100%. But how do we say, you should get over this, you shouldn't talk about this, this doesn't matter anymore, this was so long ago, that's over and done with, to your brothers and sisters in Christ? You're more concerned about me speaking out against racism than you are the actual racism.
Well, but that's the problem is that, and it kind of goes back to that first thing that we were talking about from jump, was people don't like the uncomfortableness. It's easy for them to condemn the Holocaust and Nazis because they're not a Nazi and they're not German and they're not, like, go through your list, right? Like,
right.
6 million Jews were massacred, but they didn't have their hands in that. So it's easy for them to go, yeah, no problem. Why do you think it makes people uncomfortable to denounce white supremacy, to denounce racism, to continue to talk about it, to talk about social injustice? The reason it does is because you got your hand in it and it's dirty. That's the problem. And that's why you're uncomfortable. You don't get uncomfortable with things that are easy for you to denounce and that you're guilt-free of.
For sure. Absolutely.
And when it comes to things that we carry guilt on and that we carry shame on, listen, I have not always gotten it right.
No.
I haven't.
Yeah.
And, to my brothers and sisters of color, like somebody mentioned the other day on a video that I put out, I was talking about, there was a pretty questionable 9/11 video that came out and made the rounds on TikTok.
Yeah.
And so I spoke to that, but then I coupled it with a video talking about, I appreciated the unity of our country on, September 12th and how we worked together. And, there was a lot of bipartisan happening, but somebody made a comment on my video and said, but think about how difficult it was for Muslim Americans and for folks of Middle Eastern descent in our country during that time. They didn't feel unified. They felt persecuted. And, and fortunately that follower was kind enough to message me and say, hey, I wasn't trying to correct you or anything like that. I just wanted to say, I have some friends of Middle Eastern descent and this was not a time of unity. This was a time of pain for them. And I was like, man, I got it wrong. I just got it wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Because I didn't think about it from that perspective. And, but until we're able to go, I was wrong and I messed this up. And to reconcile, I have to sit down at the table and shut my mouth and listen.
Yeah.
And be willing to be taught.
Right.
And be willing to offer apologies where they go. Right. And so anyway.
And that's a pride thing. That is a pride. We do not want to admit when we're wrong or when we got something wrong. We don't like to be corrected. You know what I'm saying? We don't like to be corrected. I'll give you an example. So, like, people always ask me, it will be the bane of my existence about the N-word. I will die people asking me about the N-word, right? Me personally, I don't use it. We don't use the N-word. I don't like the N-word. So we don't use it in our house. We don't even curse in our house. So we don't use it at all. But it's not my job to police other Black people on how they should use it. But if you're not Black, you shouldn't use it, right? Now, we have a hard time grasping that. How can you use the word, but I can't use the word? Okay, I'll give you something that has nothing to do with being Black. Jeremy, you're the only male here, so I'll ask you. Would you ever think it's ever okay to walk up to a woman and call her the B word?
Oh, heck no. Listen, I value my life.
Right.
But it's
right.
not okay because it's so derogatory.
Right. And so you know your boundary in calling another woman the B word, right?
Right.
So if me and April were in conversation and that was how I went to her, how would that make you feel, April? You'd probably be like, she's just saying girl, right?
Right. And we're like, oh, hey, B. You know?
Right. So we're able to draw that line and boundary when I'm getting somewhere with this. We're able to draw that line and boundary when it comes to calling women the B word. The reason we're not able to draw that boundary with calling Black people the N word and why we shouldn't partake in it is because we've never been told no by Black people. Whether we want to believe it or not, we've just never been told no. And so we can't comprehend the boundary of why do you get to do something, but I can't. We can comprehend it in every other place. If you come up to me and call me Stephanie, you wouldn't do that, right? Because my name's not Stephanie. My name is Jessica. So you respect my boundary in calling me Jessica and not coming up to me and calling me any other names, but yet we can't respect. We're capable of it. We're 100% capable of it. You call people their names all day. You don't call them other names. You know what I'm saying? So we're capable of self-control, you know? My daughter said to me in the car, she's 5 years old. She said to me in the car tonight, she said, you know, Mommy, my friend made me upset. I said, yeah? She goes, yeah. She goes, I wanted to push her, but I didn't. So you mean to tell me my 5-year-old has self-control, but we don't have self-control? My 5-year-old can distinguish this is not a good thing, and I don't need to put my hands on this person. But my 5-year-old can sit in the car and comprehend and tell me, Mommy, I know it's okay to be angry. I just know it's not okay to act on that. So my 5-year-old can comprehend that, but us as adults, we cannot.
I mean,
there's so much. I remember, I don't know who it was, but someone commented or made a post like early last year, and they just said, white people are exhausting. And I don't know why, but that sentence just like stuck with me. And like, I feel like almost every day now I think like white people are so exhausting.
I think my favorite phrase right now is dadgummit white people.
I know, white people. Yeah. So like, just to talk about like a persecution complex for a second. I think there's such a huge misunderstanding where white people think that elevating other people to have the same rights as them somehow means that their rights are being taken away and that they're being oppressed. Like, I had someone comment just a couple days ago on one of my videos that said, white American Christians are the most oppressed people, period. And was serious and was like defending it.
Oh, that wasn't sarcastic?
No, it was not sarcastic, because people obviously went to his comment and were like, that's the dumbest thing ever. And then he was like, oh, you people giving me these hate comments is just proving my point. And I'm like, no, someone calling you stupid online does not equal oppression.
Keep your problems in context.
Right. But I think that's been my most frustrating thing is, which I don't know how to get through to other white people that aren't like woke, for lack of a better, I actually don't like the term woke, but you know, I don't know what else to say. But just the refusal to even acknowledge, one, that they have privilege, that there's even systemic oppression. But then on the flip side, conservative Christianity, are reversing it in the sense of like, oh no, white Christians are being oppressed. Like, we are being persecuted because I have to wear a mask when I worship. Like, oh, throw me to the lions. It's the same thing. So anyway, but someone had commented, actually someone commented on our last Evangelicalish and said, can you talk about how the Black church is discussed by white evangelicals, since there have been Black evangelicals who have spoken out against Trump? Because we've obviously seen white conservative Christians and church leaders praising Trump and calling him God's chosen and all of these different things. But it's been a very different reaction from people of color in the church overall, not everyone.
Yeah.
So like, talk about that. Like what is your, like, people in your church, what do they think about white Christians right now and their love of Trump?
Yeah. So, our church, like I said, everybody wants a multicultural church until it's a time like this. Until you got one. And then you have to deal with making sure the white people don't think you hate them and the Black people feel like they're heard. So when I tell you, my husband and I have had to try to navigate that, because our church is split down the middle, where we have to navigate, how do we make white people not feel like we hate them and also make our, Black congregants feel heard. Like, you guys are standing up for me. And so, I think that we've gotten so far from actual Bible, where we're standing up for, that Proverbs 6 verse. Sometimes I just think people talk and they don't read their Bibles, like for instance, you have these pastors that were coming out and saying that God told them that Donald Trump was going to win. And not only that, they doubled down on it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You just wait. January 6th, just wait. Oh, inauguration. He's inauguration. And it's like, let's be quite honest here. Like, you're manipulating one, and Jesus was very clear. Like, people who've gone their life and served him for their life, he says, this is what Jesus says in his word. Lord, Lord, I did this in your name. I did that in your name. I did this in your name. And he says, away from me, I never knew you. You know what I'm saying? So just because you're in what you feel like is the gospel does not mean that you're actually in the gospel, and he will spit you out. I just think Christians, we feel like because we call ourselves Christians that we're exempt, but I'm like, did y'all not see? It's interesting to me how we completely miss how Jesus talked to the Pharisees and who the Pharisees even were in Scripture. You know what I mean? Yeah. They were the religious leaders. They were the ones that thought they knew it all. They were the ones that did not have compassion. Yes. You know what I mean? That's who these people were. And we're sitting back and we're being those people, and we don't even realize it.
Well, and that's a really great point, is that just because you do something in the name of something does not mean that you're actually representing that thing. And I get asked all the time, to your point, you talk about the Pharisees and the religious leaders of that time. I get asked all the time, like, people, because I'll get tons of comments on my posts about, I'm an atheist and I support you, or, I don't, I'm agnostic, or I'm struggling my faith, tons and tons of stuff like that. And then, occasionally you'll get, a friend drive in and say something, well, if all the atheists agree with you, then what does that tell you? What it tells me is that probably doing something right, because if you look at the people who are around Jesus, right, and the people that he was empowering, and the people he was giving life to, and the people that he was giving love and compassion and guidance to, those people were not the Pharisees, because the Pharisees had it figured out. They weren't They weren't teachable. They weren't going to learn. Right. And so, that's just the craziest thing to me. I'm like, do you even hear what you're saying when you tell me, oh, well, us religious people don't vibe with that. It's all these sinners and outcasts over here. And I'm like, but wait a minute, hold up, read the gospel real fast.
Right. I'll tell you a story. So there's so many times where people will be like, oh, you're a pastor's wife. Oh, you're a Christian and you don't talk about Jesus on your platform. You don't talk about Jesus. Okay, whatever. That's fine. That's whatever. That's how you feel. That's how you feel, whatever. But then on TikTok, I had this person message me, and they wrote me this long message and said that they were getting help for their alcoholism because of the way they see I live my life. Now, I didn't say, I talk about racism the whole time, and it kind of brings it to a point, but I want to leave there. What good are my words if my life is not reflecting that? Right? And so we have someone like Carl Lentz, for instance, a pastor who is removed for cheating on his wife, right? So I could talk about the Bible. People do it every week, and they're caught in these scandals. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I could be like Ravi Zachariah. He's gone now, but
that broke my heart too. That broke my heart too. I mean? Yes.
Yeah. I could do those things. But if I'm not living my life, what does it matter? It brings me something. Sorry, guys. I know I'm like, let me read this verse.
No, go for it.
I'm gonna read something else. 1 Corinthians 13. I love it, but so many times we hear the love is patient, love is kind, and everybody's like, we hear it at the weddings, we see it on your wall, like live, laugh, love is patient, love is kind,
Hey.
And so we do that, but but I think so many people miss the beginning of 1 Corinthians 13, and it's such an important part, and it really lays the foundation of the love is patient, love is kind. But it starts off and it says this: if I could speak all the languages of earth, of angels, but didn't love others, I would be nothing but a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I had the gift of prophecy, and if I understood all God's secret plans and possessed all knowledge, and if I had the faith to move mountains but didn't love others, I would be nothing. If I gave everything to the poor, sacrificed my body, I could boast about it. But if I did not love others, I gain nothing. And then it goes on to talk about love is patient, love is kind. So I could literally speak. I could say all these things. My entire page, all of my platforms could literally go completely about Jesus all the time. But if I'm not loving, if my life isn't reflecting, what do my words matter? What do my words matter? If I can't love people. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think there's a lot of Christians, quote unquote, that think sending someone a Bible verse or telling someone that they'll pray for them in a passive aggressive way somehow means that they're loving them. It's like a tough love, but like I love saying like hate wrapped in a Bible verse is still hate. And you can have all the scripture memorized, but if you don't have love, like you're going to turn people off from Jesus. You're not going to be leading them to Jesus. And I think it's super insane to me. Like growing up in Sunday school, we never, like when we hear Jesus talking to the Pharisees, we never think, oh, I could be a Pharisee one day. Like I could get like you don't picture yourself as the Pharisee. You always picture yourself as like even the story of Exodus, we never pictured ourselves as the Egyptians and the oppressors, but we always pictured ourselves as the Hebrews and the slaves when like we're freaking white Americans. Like we relate to the Egyptians. We do not relate to the Hebrews.
Yeah. And it's like, we're so busy. Here's the thing. Everybody knows what the church is against, right? Everybody knows it. Why do we have to keep, my husband always says, everybody knows what the church is against.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it. No one knows what the church is for though. We're so hung up on what we're against that we can't even stop to tell people that we love them, right? Yeah. Like we love them.
That's right.
It's so funny to me because people will write in my comments like Jesus loves you, or they'll say things like this isn't biblical or something. I'm like, yeah, yes, it is. It is very biblical. You know what? As a matter of fact, the Good Samaritan in Scripture in Matthew, it's Luke. I can't remember. I don't know. My husband's a scholar. I just kind of go off that. But the Good Samaritan, I think it's in Luke. But it's actually one of the best pictures of how this thing works out. So in the Good Samaritan, there's 3 people that pass up the Jew, right? But you know what's interesting about those 3 people is those were the ones that by society standards were supposed to help him. The Samaritan was not supposed to help him.
Yeah.
That was the person that was not supposed to help.
I talk about that when I'm doing like other podcasts. I've had an opportunity to do some of that just as the TikTok world has kind of spun faster all the time. But I talk about that all the time. I'm like, if the American church, if the white American church is going to do a better job, I think the thing that we need to really hone in on is that example of the Good Samaritan, or the one that I've really been enjoying is I think about the woman at the well. I think about how she was intentionally there in the middle of the day so that she did not have to interact with anyone. She didn't want to interact with anyone. Jesus intentionally found himself there to interact with her. Yeah. There are so many things there that don't make sense. She was a Samaritan. she was a woman. Strike one, strike two, and strike three, all right there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so because culturally she was a woman, Jesus was not going to address her. Because culturally she was a Samaritan, Jesus was not going to address her. But not only did Jesus address her in the middle of the day, knowing her background, knowing her past, knowing her history, knowing her brokenness, he's like, yeah, you've been with like 5 men and the one you're with now is not even your husband.
Yeah.
But then what does he do? He doesn't condemn her, beat her over the head with a Bible, talk about, you need to repent and all this other stuff. No. He goes to her to give her living water, what he calls living water, to restore her soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that mean for me in America?
Right,
what does that mean for my faith in America? What does that mean for right now, right here in this time? That means that I go seek out the brokenness. I go seek out, because he sought it out. He sought it out. And we go seek out the brokenness. We go seek out the hurt. We go seek out all of those things. And we speak love, grace, compassion, and we build it back up and we restore. We give living water.
Yeah.
We don't give poison. And that's that's where the church has got to get better. That's where we've got to get better.
Absolutely.
I know this isn't about this, but when I was 17, I had an abortion. And I talk about it a lot, but when I was 17, I remember very vividly, literally every second about that day. And the one thing I remember the most was the lady coming to me and telling me about, the decision, that she was a picketer in front of an abortion clinic, and she was telling me all about this girl, all about this girl she knew. And to me, she didn't know what I was going through. She didn't understand what I was going through. She could not draw from that because she knew a girl once, but she didn't know why I was making the decision. You know what I'm saying? And so many times we can't even empathize with people. We're so focused on the agenda that we don't even want to stop and listen. You know what I mean? You didn't even ask me my name. Like you don't care about me and my situation. You know what I mean? And I think so many times with Christians, we do a good job of telling people that we don't care about their situations. And it's just really just so heartbreaking, especially when you're dealing with racism and especially when you're dealing with it in the church.
Let me ask you this question. I really want to ask this question, and you can pass it if you want.
No, go ahead.
If that person, because I have made a number of videos speaking out against the evangelicals who go stand at the women's health clinics and you're a baby killer and blah blah. And we even talked a little bit, I think, about this last week. I kind of take them behind the woodshed as often as I can because I think it's hateful and ineffective. Let me ask you this question. In that situation, you said something that was really interesting to me. She didn't even ask me my name. Would it, in that time, made a difference if her approach had been different, if she wanted to hear you?
It's so funny because I talk about this to my husband all the time, and I know this wasn't the conversation. I don't mind answering that question, by the way, but, I see Christians and how we feel about abortion, right? And I asked my husband, I'm like, we personally give to centers that help provide mothers with things, we do work in our community, stuff like that. We help provide single mothers and, clothes and stuff like that. Why do these centers struggle? Right? Why is every year they're literally begging for money to stay open? Right? And so here's my thing, we can, like I said, it's stop worrying about the smoking gun, the domino effect. Why are these things happening? Here's the thing. April, earlier, I was trying to go to this point, but it kind of ties it together. You know, when people think about systemic racism, and the first time they hear about systemic racism is they hear about it with policing, right? So people think policing and they hear racism. But what a lot of people don't know is systemic racism in healthcare. Black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth. Wow. Black babies are 3 times less likely to die when they're in the care of a Black doctor. Why is that? Why is that?
Wow.
That's systemic. Why is that? Because back in slavery, they experimented on Black women in gynecology. And the reason they did that was because they convinced themselves that, or told so they would feel better about themselves, that Black people didn't feel pain as much as white people. They had a higher pain tolerance. Now, we can see studies and research that show us about the racial biases in pain medication. There's research that's done here, you know? And oftentimes I use the story of when I had my son. We had to have an emergency C-section with our son because we went to the hospital. I was 37 weeks pregnant, and the doctor did not like his heart rate. So she was like, we need to do a C-section like now. And so we walked in, and within like 2 hours, we were holding our son. It was really fast, but it was a Black doctor. And and what's funny is she wasn't my doctor. She so happened to be the doctor on call that day. And I tend to wonder if any other doctor would have taken me as seriously as she did.
Wow.
Taken my feelings as seriously as she did. Because in that situation, my son came out great, but in that situation, that was very life or death for my son.
Yeah.
We didn't know what was causing him not getting oxygen, but we knew I got there on time to get him out. You know what I'm saying? So I often wonder, would that have happened if this doctor wasn't the doctor that was here at the time? And so we think systemic racism is just in policing, but like people of color are 4 times more likely to die of COVID. Why is that? You know, there was a recent study that came out about the pulse oximeter that goes on your finger. Well, on darker skin, the more melanated the skin is, the less accurate that pulse oximeter is. So you have people of color that are dying from a disease. Get this. How do you know when they're struggling? By their oxygen levels. So the thing that you use to determine their oxygen levels are less accurate on their skin than they are on lighter skin.
Wow.
So you see what I mean?
Yeah, that just shows too. I was just going to say, just another moment of privilege where I have 2 daughters, and I never had to think of, am I going to get the care that I need? It just wasn't. It was just never a thought. Yeah. And you know, some people will say, you know, and here's the thing. Here's the craziest thing, right? That statistic does not change when you compare college-educated Black women to white women who did not finish high school. So education's not a factor, right? Serena Williams literally almost died because doctors did not take her seriously. She almost died after she gave birth to her daughter. So granted, this is one piece of evidence, but money's not a factor. Right. And so these are things beyond our control. These are just ideologies that have been perpetuated that allow people to think that Black people just don't feel pain as much as white people. That has nothing to do with being respectful. It has nothing to do with making sure you don't talk nicely to the doctors. That has nothing to do with anything else but a ideology that the doctors or nurses step into the room with before you even get there. So that's something that's systemic that has nothing to do with policing. Because policing, we give all these excuses, right? We say, well, if they, right? But you can't give those excuses when you're in the delivery room. No.
You're just a birthing mother or, you know, person.
Yeah. You have no control, no control in that situation because you're not the one in control, right? It's those medical professionals who are supposed to be doing their job, period. Wow.
I feel like we could talk about this forever. I mean, you have a whole TikTok channel Oh, just on this. If you guys do not follow at the Just Eaton on TikTok, you totally should. Like I learn new stuff just about every day from her, and it's super informative. Just want to be mindful of our time because we are past 10. So is there anything else, like real quick, do you want to talk about? I don't know if anyone has any questions that's here with us live, but anything else that you wanted to talk about tonight that we didn't get to?
Yeah, I think that in a season like this, we have to keep an open mind. There are going to be things that are hard to hear, and we have to be okay with that if we want to see change. Those things have to happen. We have, as a society, continued to put Band-Aids on gunshot wounds and expecting them to get better, and they've done nothing but get infected. And sometimes it's going to be hard because you want to, hold your ground and hear, your part, but ask why you're pushing so hard for you to be heard rather. Why are you pushing so hard to say, well, I had it happen too, and I had it happen too. Just listen, I'm reading this book and they were saying, I was telling my husband, I was reading this book. It's called So You Want to Talk About Race. And, what she was saying is she was giving two perspectives. Like when people say, why does everything have to be about race, right? And people are missing that it's always about race for people like me, because I'll give you an example that she gave. She said, she's walking around the store and she's being followed by a white woman. So that white person may follow everybody, right? She may follow everybody that comes into the store. It may not be about race for her. People just keep stealing, whatever. But for that black person, that's the 500th time she's been followed in a store. You know what I'm saying? And so to you, it may be completely innocent, but to her, it's racism because it happens all of the time. And it's important also to, I don't know if there's any questions, I'll be real quick, but it's important also too, to not just think of racism. People say we water down the word racism. No, we need to water it down because we've made it to the point where we just think racism lives under a white hood, and it doesn't. Racism, that is implicit biases. Covert racism is real racism. And we have to be mindful too of things that we think are not racist, like being called an Oreo, that are actually covert racist. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. I have a really quick question. I know that we're over time. I don't know that there's any in the chat, but one thing that irks me beyond like nobody's business is like if I am talking about racism or whatever, make a post, and like I've had family members send me this privately or publicly, but like Candace Owens videos to like and I as a white person, like I feel like I can't. Well, I try to respond of like, that's fine for her to have those views, but she doesn't speak for the majority of Black Americans. Like, I feel like we need to listen to the whole, not just one person that's, speaking to us. But as a white person, I feel like I can't talk to anyone's experience. I can't tell you, no, you didn't experience that. And I can't tell Candace Owens, like, well, you haven't experienced that.
Right.
But like, what's your take on like the Candace Owens of the world?
Yeah. Well, I if it makes you feel any better, I've also been sent Candace Owens videos too. You know what I'm saying? And
oh my gosh.
If that makes you feel any better, but see, in my end,
you're just supposed to feel like Candace Owens, like she speaks for you.
I guess so. What's funny is that when I ask people why they send it to me, they say, I just want you to see another side. And I asked them, are you sending Candace Owens my videos?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
I'm going to do that
tonight. See another side, if you want me to see another side, then you must want her to see another side too.
Oh, I'm going to start doing that on Twitter.
Else you're just sending me this to shut me up, right? So, here's the thing: black people are not a monolith, right? I think of things where she can feel the way that she does. But Candace Owens is one of those people, when I see her and hear her stuff, that I'm more fueled with, people always, a lot of times, especially on my TikTok, when I respond to certain comments, people are like, how do you keep much composure? And it's really people like that, because what you're not going to pin me as is this angry. You're not going to say I'm hateful. And so instead of me responding to you in anger, I'm going to respond to you in the love of 1 Corinthians 13.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, you see Candace Owens and she's firing. It's, you know, and let's be honest here. The Bible is very clear on our language. Don't let foul or abusive language come out of your mouth. Let your words be uplifting and encouraging. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So when people send me things like that, I'm just like, is this foul or abusive? The language that this is saying, not according to you, because there's some things that are going to be hard to hear, but is this truth and love, or is this foul and abusive? You know what I'm saying? Good. But then I always say, what videos are you sending Candace? That's a good one.
I'm seriously going to start using that. I'm going to say, anytime someone sends me Candace Owens, I'm just going to start sending them your videos.
But here's the thing about Candace Owens too, what people forget to understand, whether Candace Owens believes it or not, which really made me mad, and made me have to defend Candace Owens. But whether people believe it or not, when they were wishing death on Candace Owens' baby, they were failing to realize that Candace Owens is still 3 times more likely to die in childbirth than a white woman. Whether Candace believes it or not, she's still affected by systemic racism.
Yeah.
So not only do I, for instance, this is something that I speak a lot about is the birth is more mortality rates with Black women or women of color in general, but more so with Black women. I speak on that. And so I'm not speaking on that just for people like me. I'm also fighting for Candace Owens, that she and her babies, and she has a fighting chance at birth too, where she's not discriminated against in birth too.
And that she may, because she has chosen not to see the problem, she may never even get to experience the solution, but you're working for her solution.
I'm working for her solution too.
Despite it. Yeah. That's intense. Listen, you know, that's such a great way, I think, to kind of finish the conversation tonight for sure, because that's powerful. But mark my words, I'm going to start tweeting Candace Owens your videos. I'm going to start just sharing them straight to Twitter at Candace Owens.
You know what? One of my really good friends did that, and that poor girl, Candace Owens, said something back to her.
Oh, and, of course she did.
And it was pretty funny. She made a whole video, Candace did. It was kind of crazy, but you know what? Here's the thing. People can come at me. They can be hateful, but I won't be hateful to them. So it's all good.
That's good.
And that's why we love you.
That's right.
I love you guys.
Well,
yes.
I was just going to ask, so people can follow you on TikTok, kind of give us the rundown of places for folks to find you.
Yeah, so I'm at the Jess Eaton, so TheJessEaton, on all platforms. So on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. I'm at the Jess Eaton, so you can follow me on all those platforms.
Any other cool projects or anything you're working on?
You know, actually, I'm shooting a podcast with a friend about Star Trek on Sunday. But
Star Trek?
But we're addressing racism on Star Trek. So it's pretty cool.
Okay.
So I'm excited about that. So I have some homework to watch some things. But no, and I also, same with my YouTube channel, is at the Jess Eaton. I do obviously quick minute videos on TikTok, but my YouTube channel, really, I try to dig into specific topics and conversations, and those are like a lot longer. So yeah.
Awesome. Everyone go follow at the Jess Eaton on TikTok and on YouTube. She is awesome. And thank you guys so much for being with us for our second episode of Evangelicalish. And we will be here again next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, 7 Mountain, 6 Pacific. We didn't mention Pacific tonight because Paul's not here, but I'm going to mention it for him because he's in California.
That's good.
So lucky.
All right.
Okay.